And what if you want to launch a Fab Lab in your own city? What you should do? Probably, if I could give you advice, it is to drive all the way up to Helsinki and to ask for advice by a young Italian master who was teaching there at the Aalto University, Massimo Menichinelli.
Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to talk about something that started more than 10 years ago and first started as an experiment and now it's becoming more and more important and mainstream, and this thing is open design. And it's also something that happened especially in Fab Labs, but also in many of the maker and makerspaces projects. So what is open design? Of course, you could say very simply that it's bringing open source principles and practice inside any kind of design project. But what is actually open design and how it can be? I will make just a short example of what is open source and open design, just to show you in a clearer way. So if you see any project of design, they are the outcome of a process and a set of documentation, the blueprint or prescription or recipe. It's the same of making a cake. You need the recipe and you need the process, okay? What happens when you don't have open design, when you don't have access to all the information? Well, you have a place where actually all the cakes are the same. So there is no modification, no ingredients can be added, nothing can be changed. If somebody's allergic to an ingredient, there is no way of doing that. So instead, when you do open design and you give access to all the blueprint and all the information and the process as well of a design project, you have something very different. You are a place where everybody can have their own role in shaping the projects and adapt to their local situation. And this is, for example, the first example that open design have found. This was done at the end of the 90s by ThinkCycle. It was a platform developed by some researchers at MIT. It was the first platform where students, NGO, local community experts were designing together to design some open source devices. It is white and red device that you can see. It was designed for treating cholera. But this was one of the first examples. Actually, if you go online, it's already offline. But there are more examples that happened after that. This one is a bit more interesting. It's called OpenMoko. And this was the first mass product that was completely open source, because it was open source in the hardware, it was open source in the software, but it was also open source in the design. And it was so open that the company sold it also with a toolkit for hacking it. So you could buy the smartphone and the tool for modifying it. And this was the real first mass product. So it's all open design. It's also for companies. It's not just for DIY and makers. But open design can be even something small and immaterial. So it could be something like typographic font. The font that you see here, the Gentium, was the first open source font. It was very important because with this font, some people also released the specific license for fonts. So open design can be even something immaterial. It doesn't have to be about manufacturing. But open design could be even something big. It could be as big as a house. And this is WikiHouse, one of the many open architectural design examples. And it's very interesting because you can download all the blueprints for creating an architectural structure, but you also can upload your own structure. So open design can be a lot of different things, but let's have a brief look at why we should do open design. The first reason is if we have access to all the documentation and all the functioning of a product, then we can really say that we actually the owner, as the self-repair manifesto said, you don't own if you can't open it. So there is this idea that if you can open and you can modify the product, that you can make it last longer. Because recycling is a very good idea, but every time that you recycle, all the materials get worse and they lose some kind of quality. So it's very important to be able also to modify and upgrade existing projects. A second reason is like that with open design, it would be much more possible to create shorter networks for supply chain. The supply chain are the networks that are actually put into practice for creating something physical, some goods and products. The supply chain that you see here on the screen is the supply chain of a big pen. So something very simple, but as you see, it takes materials and processes from all over the world, so it's not that sustainable because it's taking a lot of fossil fuels for doing all shipping of goods and materials, raw materials. So it's very important that with open design we can make this manufacturing more distributed. Probably we won't be able to distribute it completely, but it will be much more sustainable than in the way it is right now. And this is a very interesting example, source map, because it's an open source application for analyzing and visualizing supply chains. And this is the first step for designing supply chains. The third reason why we should make open design, as you see also the same picture in Joseph Prusa's presentation, is that every time that you design something in the open source way, you create the more possibility for having a whole ecosystem of people, initiatives, businesses, organizations working together at the same time. So when you design something in the openness, it's very important that you can create much more than just a single product. You can create much more possibilities. It's also a good way for creating business, but it's also a good way for solving problems very quickly with many different local adaptations. And especially if you design is the problem-solving applications, the problem-solving discipline, this is one of the best ways for working with that. So one of the things I've been doing in the past year is not just researching and lecturing about open design, but also trying to develop tools and the processes for doing two specific things. The design of the process of inside an open design project, and also the analysis of a community inside the design project. So let's have a look first at the process. It's very important that we find a way to design and visualize how the design process is going on with all the people involved in the design process, because otherwise we don't have a mass collaboration on the same project. So I'll be spending a lot of time on developing tools for having mass collaboration inside the design process. This picture that you see is the outcome of a workshop I did in Singapore in 2009. It was about visualizing the functionings of all the flows and interaction inside the design process. But designing the flows and interaction is only one part of the picture, because this is a way of saying how things should do, but then we have to say actually how things are. So I've been spending a lot of time also developing specific tools for analyzing communities and visualizing them. So the picture that you see, for example, here, this is the picture of the friendships in the Italian maker community. And with this picture, you can see a lot of things. Of course, you can browse it online and you can see all the nodes in the network. But here you can see that, for example, there's a huge group in the center that is very cohesive. But you can see that there are also a lot of people in the circle around it. That means there are new people every time join the community. So the community is still growing. And if you see in the center, you see that you have different colors. That means you have different sub-communities that are developed separately. And that's quite important because you can see, for example, that the community of the pioneers of digital fabrication, making, and so on, work separately from researchers in the academia. So the last thing I would like to show is that actually open design is becoming important nowadays. 1 year ago, more than 1 year ago, I was invited to a co-design workshop in Brussels where official recommendations for the new policies for the European Union for design were developed. And I was specifically invited for bringing open design in digital fabrication. And actually, there were other people interested in this, so we actually made it. And in the end, open design is actually one of the official recommendations for the future policies and the future laws of the European Union regarding design. Because open design is seen as a promising way for developing projects, but also a promising way for developing business, especially in a time of crisis. So that's why open design is going to be even more important in the future, and it's going to affect us, and it's going to be recognized even by state. Thank you.
Thank you, Massimo.